Okay, you guys, I hope you're all well. So what I'm doing here is I'm putting on a review from something that we did in the study skills modules that you're running. And one of those is actually trying to use case studies within the business management books that you're using, looking at those case studies from an English language perspective, from an academic perspective, and trying to find ways for you to improve how you're relating to the materials that you're studying in your books and in your lectures on business management modules. So obviously we're using one of your books, which is the Management Books by Boddy. You guys have copies of this book that you've either bought yourselves or you're taking them from the library here. And as I said, what we're trying to do here through the study skills modules is to find ways to support you in your studies so that you're able to engage a lot more with the key terms that are being studied with the business, with your business teachers, in order to actually participate more fully. And then linked to that is about your assessments, because there will be a case study period, a case study section in your exam, and in that case study you will be asked to answer and respond to them. So we're using Boddy's case studies, and within that I'm just going to use the first one. We're going to go through the first case study from the first chapter, which has 3 separate parts to it. So you have a link to the case study here that you can get to, or you can go to your books to actually find that case study. And I put the case study up there, and we did a few tasks within the lecture. So this is a place for you to either check what it is you did in the lesson, or a place for you to be looking at if you happen to miss the lecture as we went. So as part of what we looked at, we actually looked at the full text. So this is the text that is in your books. You can see it sets up the case study as it is, and we sort of looked through it, and I asked you to perform a couple of tasks within that. So the first thing we did was to look at our ideas behind prediction, and what we can predict from a text before we read it, so we actually understand what it is we're trying to look at. So we looked at the title of the case study, we looked at the photograph, and we looked at the table. And from that, if you imagine from your prediction, you're able to tell me what the text is actually about. So it's about a specific company. That company deals in airplanes, and the data and the information that we're being provided in initially is some data about the company over a select number of years. So within that, and in terms of that case study, the next thing I asked you to do was to do a quick scan for numbers. So from paragraph 1, I just asked you to focus in on every number that you could find and very quickly identify those numbers. And once you had identified those numbers, then you were going to look at the actual chart, to go back to the chart, and you can actually give me some answers as to about what this data actually means. So you can actually start to find this information, and you can actually show me what has happened to this information. So why have these numbers changed, by how much, and what does it actually mean, and what other data is being provided in the numbers that you have. So please make sure that you try that. If you haven't already done it, find the data, find the information, scan for the numbers, and then try and identify what the table on the chart is actually trying to do. The next task was to look at the second paragraph, 2 paragraphs about, and to look at more information, just a quick comprehension activity. So as you read the case study, a lot of you are not even reading these case studies. It's about you reading the case studies, read the case study, and do a comprehension activity, 4 very quick, very easy questions for you to find and analyze. And then the next part of that was to actually look at the questions that you're being asked within the textbook, and to think about how you would go about answering them. And the one thing that I wanted to focus on from an English language perspective and from developing your study skills further was the third question in there, where it says 3 examples of external forces. Now, what I want to stress here, especially from the assessment perspective, is that when you're going to do your exam, you're not just going to find the 3 examples in the text and provide those into your answers. You need to think about what the paragraph response actually wants you to do. And part of that is to define the terms. What does external forces? What are external forces? Explain them. So what do they mean? When do they exist? When do they come about? And then give examples. So you're writing a larger paragraph in terms of trying to find that answer and trying to provide that answer. And that's really important to be doing, especially when you're considering it from an assessment perspective. So pause it here if you haven't done it. Please go into the text and carry out those 3 activities in terms of trying to set yourselves up, and in terms of being able to answer the questions and participate and engage with the case studies that you're actually seeing. So you're getting a little bit better at studying and at thinking about what you're learning in your actual lesson. Linked to that, as I said, in terms of this external forces, do make sure that you're going back into your book. So you also see that I've highlighted one of the key pages. And one of those key pages actually deals with some of the information that you want to find in order to be able to take that information out, to be able to write your paragraph, to be able to think about how you would respond to it. So it's about trying to make you engage a little bit more with your textbook before you start to give answers for a case study. And then you start to think how you can answer this better. Okay, so as I say, pause it there, go and find those answers, go and carry out those tasks if you haven't done it, because if you're submitting the paragraph to me, I'm more than happy to receive them. And then the next thing, as this paragraph presentation goes through, I'll run through some of the answers so you can start to see what it is that you've done. So you can pause it here if you haven't done these activities, or you can just leave it to run, and then you can see what the answers were so you can be checking against them following this. Okay, so in the first one, I told you to scan for numbers in order to be answered questions about the chart. So you obviously would have found the dates from 2018 giving these sorts of numbers, and then 2019 giving these sorts of numbers. And then we started to answer some questions about the charts. We started to ask some questions about what was going on. So we had the actual fact that there was an 8% or a 10% change, but as we noted in the text, that growth was lower than before. And we started to ask why that was the case. And then we started to talk about what 2019 expectations were in terms of what the numbers actually show us and in terms of what we're talking about. So we're starting to think about what that information is that we are given and we are provided with. Then the reading comprehension was very simple. It's just about finding out the name of the person who created the aircraft, when he founded it, what happened in the 1990s in terms of what his idea was in terms of developing this airline so that it became no frills, and no frills means that there is no luxury. It is a functional and efficient service. And then what happened during the 90s was the European Union allowed other airlines to enter the markets, meaning that there was a greater opportunity to open routes between cities in Europe. And then you had your data in terms of 80%. So those are the basic answers. That's where you can find the answers to the comprehension questions that we asked. And then the final task was for you to think about your actual response to your paragraph. So as I said before, really important to be thinking about going into your textbook, finding the answers in your textbook, and then coming in and finding the examples in the actual sample paragraph. So from that, I'm expecting a paragraph quite simply that has 3 to 4 sentences where you're telling me what external forces mean, what they include, when they're used, or when they come about, and then to actually find the information in the case study to provide it to me. So writing that paragraph and submitting it to me or sharing it with me would have provided you with the answer from it. Okay, so that's just the first. Obviously, the case study grows and develops as we get more into your unit in the Boddy management book, and they link even more detail with the information you're learning in your management book. So please make sure that when you are studying, when you're taking on the information that you receive, you are thinking about how you link the topics and the concepts, and how you link to the case studies as well, and how you're responding to them. So we'll look at case study 2 and case study 3 as part of the whole Ryanair unit case study that is provided on Boddy, and I'll provide additional materials as we go. Please feel free to stop this as you need to in terms of finding the answers and in terms of participating with me. And then when you come to your study skills lessons, you'll be able to drop in with the other lecturers as well to be able to develop these topics further. All right. Thank you very much.